I call the honourable member Claire Curran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, so the question is today whether Tony Ryle should be appointed to that Intelligence and Security Committee, that very important but very secret committee of Parliament in which a huge amount of responsibility rests on the members of Parliament who sit on it. The question is whether Tony Ryle is suitable for that appointment, and in order to examine that question, we need to look at what is currently before that committee, which is a bill which is extremely controversial. It was extremely controversial. It's extremely controversial for a number of reasons. It was extremely controversial before last Friday when it was revealed that there were very serious allegations and evidence appearing about a massive surveillance program operating out of the United States and the implications of that for our country and in particular on the legislation which is currently before that secretive Intelligence and Security Committee. Mr. Speaker, there are too many questions for this legislation to be before that committee now. That was our position before last Friday. That is even more our position today. And we have said that we need an inquiry before we look at legislation like this. We need a full inquiry into our intelligence agencies. This bill before this committee is one of two bills which are being considered together, both at different select committees. The second bill is a Telecommunications Interception Capability and Security Bill. It is also a bill over which there rests an enormous number of questions. We believe there has to be an inquiry into the intelligence agencies because of the importance of privacy, the importance of balance. And Mr. Speaker, it is absolutely important to put on the record that communications security is important. It is absolutely important, but so is the privacy and the freedoms of New Zealanders. And who is looking after that and who is representing them on that when we are taking into account the issues that are in these two bills? Nobody, because this in the government side of the House, and that is what we fear, and that is why there is huge question marks over whether the appointment of Tony Ryle to that committee will actually make things worse. Getting the balance right between privacy and security is absolutely critical. It's a huge responsibility for a parliament, and for a parliament as well as the people who sit on that committee. They have huge responsibility, and our fear is that there is another brother going to join the big brother on that committee, and that the legislation that is going to be forced through will not have the adequate scrutinies. So is Tony Ryle fit to sit on that committee? Will he ask the questions? Will he represent New Zealanders? Will he obfuscate and block? Because this is about integrity, Mr. Speaker, and that's what's under scrutiny, integrity and trust. On the 10th of June, John Key said, quote, "To make a contribution, you have to have integrity. And to have integrity, there has to be a directness and a fullness in your answers." The problem is there is no fullness in his answers because there are usually no answers at all. And the answers that are given skirt around the questions and certainly do not provide adequate answers. It's happening time and time again in this House, and it is a serious issue. I want to pose some questions, but before that, the question of integrity and trust is absolutely critical. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, actually, a major telecommunications company told me that they would have no knowledge if the GCSB was actually undertaking, I apologise for that, Mr. Speaker, they would have knowledge if the GCSB or another security agency wanted to access New Zealand phone numbers in our country, because there would have to be a warrant. But they wouldn't know if an overseas intelligence agency, such as NASA or the FBI, was hoovering up intelligence on New Zealanders' phone calls, texts, and use of social media and the internet. And they said to me that they have to take the Prime Minister on trust that that isn't happening in our country. Now, the problem is, how do we know? Because he won't tell us. And that is a serious issue. Now, in considering what Tony Ryle, whether he's a suitable appointment on this committee, we have to know if he is going to ask the right questions. And I want to put some of those questions to the House today, because he needs to be accountable if he is sitting on that committee, and we need to know that those questions will be asked, or that at least he will want to know the answers. Questions such as whether the new provisions within the GCSB bills will make it possible for a PRISM-like system to operate legally within New Zealand. Because, Mr. Speaker, on the face of it, that is what it does. Will, including services like what they call the service providers like Facebook, Yahoo, Skype and Google, in the new telecommunications bill, which impacts on the GCSB bill, have a chilling effect on the growth of the weightless export economy within New Zealand. Because, Mr. Speaker, on the face of it, that's what will happen. And will the Telecommunications Intercept Bill and the GCSB bills have a far-reaching impact on the privacy of citizens? Because, Mr. Speaker, there has been no Bill of Rights vetting released yet, so we don't know. And will he ask why Clause 15A 1/2 within the GCSB bill explicitly give the Prime Minister unilateral authorisation to allow the GCSB to act unlawfully? Because, Mr. Speaker, that's what this bill does. If he doesn't ask those questions, if he doesn't want the answers to those questions, then he doesn't deserve to be on that committee. Mr. Speaker, this is such a serious piece of legislation before that committee. Mr. Ryle's position on that committee is absolutely critical that he gets it right. The notion that personal privacy is a right rather than a privilege is being eroded at a blinding speed. Those were the words of a New Zealand commentator this week. The whistleblower who has made those revelations about PRISM in the United States have sparked deep anger and unease in countries across the region, in the United States, in Australia, in Canada, in the UK. In our country, those issues are continuing to raise concern. There has been requests from stakeholders and organisations for extensions on the submissions on this legislation. I am pleased to say that there does appear to be an extension of 1 week for the GCSB legislation. In the case of the other piece of legislation, there is no extension. This is not democracy, Mr. Speaker. This is not accountability. And this is very concerning. There's one risk that's not in this. One of our biggest risks is that the good guys are catching the bad guys, that if the good guys catch the bad guys, They won't always be seen as the good guys if their capacity to delve deeply into what should be private goes too far. Instead of appointing Tony Ryle to this committee, there should be an independent inquiry into New Zealand's intelligence agencies. That's what we need to have in this country.
Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr. Speaker, I'm absolutely